This is good. Can't wait for the breakdown of Bill Belichick and his girlfriend.
Oh, this is just an amazing story. So Belichick leaves New England, doesn't coach, does media last year. Some of it was kind of fun to be around and watch. And then takes a North Carolina job out of the clear blue sky. And then suddenly the 73-year-old Belichick winds up in this relationship with a 24-year-old woman. So Belichick's at North Carolina, and John and I have talked a little bit about this whole storyline that during spring football, and here's the Hoodie walking the sidelines, and here's the babe, Jordan Hudson, strolling behind him in hot pants, leather boots, big time distraction. So anyhow, Belichick in the last half year decided he's going to write a book about his history in football, what he's done in 35 years, where he came from, how he became what he became, who influenced him, and all that. They set up a deal to do an interview with CBS TV. They sit down to do a 35-minute interview that ran on CBS Sunday Morning last weekend. And it just was not about what was in the book. It was about a whole series of other questions. And the longer the interview went, the more uncomfortable the interview became, because Belichick, who, by the way, looked like a bum, like Freddie fraternity guy with a torn hoodie, Belichick just starting to get standoffish, just like his press conferences, just not wanting to answer. And then Jordan Hudson, the babe, sitting off on the sidelines, who's his CEO of Belichick Media, she starts interjecting herself when the CBS reporter asks certain questions. We're not talking about that. He doesn't have to answer that question. This interview is supposed to be about football. So anyhow, the CBS reporter said, Bill, nowhere in the book, 185 pages in the book, is any reference made to Robert Kraft and New England. Why would that be? Well, I don't work there anymore. Yeah, but that was a long, successful run. Well, we parted mutually. Well, no, you were fired, according to Robert Kraft. So anyhow, so then they get antsy about that. And then the CBS guy is kind of distracted because she keeps interjecting herself into the questions 8 times, I was told. 8 times in 35 minutes, she interjected about, we're not talking about that. So he turns to her and the camera shoots her sitting off on the sidelines trying to direct traffic. It was just absolutely hilarious. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? So at the end of the day, this is what dawned on me. Here's the Hoodie over the course of his entire career. And I dealt with him with the Patriots, and I dealt with him when he was in Cleveland as a voice of the Chargers, a voice of the Seahawks. I like interacting with him because I didn't have to deal with him every day. Here's the Hoodie, who's controlled the narrative of everything in his life.
Yes.
Forever. He can't control this now because he doesn't have the power of the NFL. And now the media is up in arms and saying his babe is not going to interject herself and interfere with us doing our job. He came off as condescending. The whole thing was awkward. I think it's self-destructive for Belichick to act this way. You know, they said Belichick put out 2 press releases through the University of North Carolina and his CEO, that we had an agreement. We're going to talk football. CBS came back yesterday and said, hell no, there was no agreement. We're going to talk about everything we want to talk about. And then he bitched about the fact, well, they edited it all down. Well, of course they edit everything down. They're not going to give you 35 minutes to publicize your book. It was an 8-minute segment. I thought it was kind of flawed. I didn't like there was no flow to it at all. He was not interactive with the reporter. It could have been a lot better. Because I've interviewed Belichick maybe 5 times, and I found him interesting to talk to as long as I wasn't trying to ask him about Tom Brady or stuff in the New England locker room. But other stuff, he'd open up. And so anyhow, I just thought the whole thing turned out to be bombastic. And I think he's doing a disservice to himself. You make yourself available, be the guy. Make yourself available, answer all the questions, instead of allowing her to interject herself. And so I thought it was an unbelievable fiasco. And it's not going to get any better because he's taken a lot of heat in North Carolina about 73-year-old man with a 24-year-old woman. You're kidding me. And you're supposed to act like everything's fine and this is natural. At the end of the day, she a control freak? At the end of the day, why has he entrusted his whole credibility career in the hands of a 24-year-old? And John, argue with me that she's just not a gold digger. Okay, there we are. Those are my topics on the table. That's my read of the whole thing. He controlled it once upon a time. Now he can't control it, and he's got her controlling it, which is really, to me, is a bad look. John?
Well, she could be a student at UNC. I mean, that's young.
Supposedly.
Imagine if you had a 24-year-old hottie following you around in hot pants and white leather boots. I could just picture it. This whole thing is just sheer comedy. I mean, because the hoodie is such a
persona.
A persona, a curmudgeon, and did you see, like you said, he was dressed like a fraternity slob. He was it an army sweatshirt? But Navy, pardon me.
He had holes in it. And
yeah, it looked like he had like spilt food on his sweatshirt and everything.
John Belushi at his best.
Yes, exactly. It was Mr. 0.0 GPA. So it's the whole thing is just so out of character for Bill Belichick. The way that he would give these one-word answers and never smile in a press conference. And now all of a sudden he's got something to smile about. But she's like Yoko Ono, she's like manipulating and kind of disrupting the energy, but he's smiling now and he's liking it. So on one level, I'm like happy for Bill, but on the other level, this whole thing just looks strange to the outside world. And by the way, I did see in one of the clips I saw, they showed her, what's her name? Jordan. Yeah. And so she was sitting at a table with one of the producers and chiming in. Oh, we didn't agree to talk about that. But when you have like 8 interruptions over a 30-something minute interview, I mean, it's going to be hard to find like an 8-minute segment that they can use.
Well, everything was edited together, individual questions, but some of them were just cream puffs that didn't have any merit to being on the being on the broadcast because it was slotted to be 8 minutes.
This whole thing. I mean, imagine like if you're the UNC president, this is not a good look for your university. I mean, imagine if the UNC president was running around with a 24-year-old hottie. That wouldn't be a good thing.
You think?
No.
Well, he has to answer to the board of trustees.
Yeah.
Belichick answers unto himself and to the boosters.
Well, pretty much. That's not going down like that. But this whole thing is just comedy. It's like I made a reference earlier that it seemed like when he was going to these ball games and she was coming with him to the stadiums, it was like he was walking his dog, this spectacle, with all the bling, that just sort of follows him around. It's so weird that you can't help but talk about it.
I'd lean forward and say, Jordan, do you want to go to the car and get his blue pill?
Yeah,
Jesus.
That's exactly what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
was he married?
Yeah, he was and he got divorced a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago.
And there's a sidebar story that just broke about an hour before I came over here to do the podcast. His son, Steve Belichick, is his defensive coordinator. Used to be with him at New England, went to the University of Washington as coordinator, left Washington, just joined. Steve Belichick's wife, the daughter-in-law, just ripped the hell out of the Hoodie and the Babe for the way they conducted their business on TV. Soap opera.
She's probably like going, oh man, when the will has to be executed, this hottie's going to get all of Belichick's assets.
Oh, so you're subscribing to my question about Gold Digger?
Well, yeah, definitely there's some of that, but there is opportunity for her. I mean, if she's, the CEO of Belichick Media, which I didn't know such a thing existed, there's a little bit of a win-win going on here. But yeah, I mean, Bill needs to keep her at arm's length. Don't marry her.
Okay, plain and simple. Fans Forum chat box is open. Let's talk about the topic of the day. Let's talk about the Hoodie versus CBS. Feel free to jump on board. Did you see any of it? You want to react to what I said, what the guy from left field had to say? He could identify with a guy wearing a torn sweatshirt. That's what he did at UCSD all the time. I saw pictures in his yearbook.
The first time that I met you in person, you were wearing like a ratty, like Yankee sweatshirt.
Still have it. Would have worn it today. Okay, fans forum chat box is open. I can't wait to hear somebody talk about Belichick and the whole TV interview thing and Belichick and the Babe. Jump on board. Next topic on the